Most people recognize Edi Gathegi as the smooth and dangerous vampire Laurent in Twilight, or as Darwin in X-Men First Class. But behind the screen roles, his real story is something far more dramatic. And once destined for a career in basketball, Edi's life took a devastating turn. From battling depression to stepping on stage in Shakespeare plays, and now rising as Mr. Terrific in James Gunn's Superman, Gathegi's journey is one of constant reinvention. And the twists in his life reveal a story that Hollywood never told you. Hi, I'm CB, and this is... Edi Gathegi entered the world on March 10, 1979, in Nairobi, Kenya. His early years carried the rhythm of a culture rich in tradition, but his family's journey would soon shift across continents. When Edi was still young, his parents decided to move to the United States, settling in Albany, California. For the young boy, this change wasn't just a relocation, it was a complete rewriting of identity. He was suddenly navigating a new world, new culture, and a new definition of home. As the middle child, Edi grew up sandwiched between two strong personalities. His older brother, Nate Dogg, had the confidence and presence of a firstborn, while his younger sister, Betty G, being in the middle often meant learning how to adapt, how to find balance, how to observe, and how to hold his own without losing himself. That instinct to adapt would later become one of the most powerful tools in his acting career. But in those early years, Edi wasn't thinking about Hollywood, Shakespeare, or even the stage. His passion was locked onto one thing: basketball. Standing tall and athletic, he was determined to make a name for himself on the court. By the time he entered the University of California, Santa Barbara, his dedication to the sport was clear. He had the drive, the competitive spirit, and the hunger to push himself to the limit. For him, basketball wasn't just a pastime, it was the dream. And then, reality struck with a cruelty that felt almost personal. A devastating knee injury brought that dream crashing down. In one moment, everything he thought his life was going to be simply vanished. The game he loved was taken from him, and so was the future he had built around it. For a young man whose entire identity was wrapped around athletics, the injury wasn't just physical, it was emotional, even spiritual. He slipped into a period of frustration, questioning who he was if not an athlete. But life has a strange way of hiding opportunities inside heartbreak. What felt like the end was quietly setting the stage for a completely different destiny, one that would eventually place Edi Gathegi in front of millions around the world. For a while, the injury left Edi lost. He had built his entire sense of self around being an athlete, and when that was stripped away, the silence was heavy. The depression that followed wasn't just about losing basketball, it was about losing purpose. He was a young man with no clear direction, carrying a wound deeper than his knee could ever explain. But in that emptiness, something unexpected appeared. At just 21 years old, while still searching for a way forward, Edi stumbled into an acting class. At first, it wasn't ambition that pushed him through the door. It was curiosity, maybe even desperation to fill the void. Yet, the moment he stepped on stage, something clicked. For the first time since basketball, he felt alive again. Acting wasn't just performance, it was transformation. On the stage, he wasn't limited by his injury. He could become anyone, explore emotions, and channel parts of himself he had never voiced out loud. What began as a class soon grew into a calling. Edi wasn't just good, he was magnetic, a natural. Professors and peers saw it, and slowly, so did he. That discovery became the first spark of reinvention. No longer just the injured athlete trying to pick up the pieces, Edi began to see himself in a new light. As an artist, a storyteller, and maybe even a star. Driven by this new fire, he pursued acting with the same intensity he once gave to basketball. He applied to the prestigious New York University's Tisch School of the Arts, one of the most competitive MFA programs in the country. Against the odds, he got in. At NYU, his world expanded. He studied theater, devoured classic plays, and pushed himself into roles that demanded discipline and vulnerability. From Shakespeare's Othello to A Midsummer Night's Dream, Edi threw himself into characters that tested his range. What started as chance had transformed into purpose. The injury that once felt like a curse had unknowingly guided him toward the path he was born for. And though he didn't realize it at the time, this turning point was the foundation of a career that would soon carry him from small stages to Hollywood's biggest screens. Armed with training from NYU and a newfound sense of purpose, Edi Gathegi was ready to step into the professional world. But Hollywood isn't known for handing out easy victories. Like every actor starting out, he faced the grind of auditions, rejections, and the uncertainty of whether he had made the right choice, leaving behind the safe, predictable path of a more practical career. Still, Edi wasn't the type to back down. He had already reinvented himself once. He wasn't about to quit now. His early opportunities came on the stage, where he performed in powerful productions such as You Like It, Othello, A Midsummer Night's Dream, and Cyrano de Bergerac. The theater gave him something invaluable, the discipline of craft. Night after night, in front of small but attentive audiences, he learned how to command a room, embody a character, and live truthfully in imaginary circumstances. These performances sharpened him like steel against stone. Then came the transition to film. His very first role on the big screen was in Crank, 2006, a high-octane action movie starring Jason Statham. The part was small, but for Edi, it was everything. It was proof that he could make the leap from the stage to Hollywood's unpredictable world of cameras and edits. More importantly, it put his face on the radar of casting directors who were always searching for new talent. The next year, in Gone Baby Gone, 2007, directed by Ben Affleck, Edi stepped into a darker, grittier role that showed he could bring depth and intensity beyond his brief debut. This was no fluke. He had the range to adapt, and Hollywood was beginning to notice. Around the same time, he landed a recurring role on the hit medical drama House, playing Dr. Jeffrey Cole during season 4. It was television that gave him a more consistent platform, allowing audiences to see him week after week. These early projects marked the first real steps of a career in motion. He wasn't yet a household name, but he was building something bigger, a foundation of credibility and versatility. Each role became a brick in the wall, solidifying his place as an actor who couldn't be ignored. And then, just as his momentum was building, a new opportunity came knocking. A role in a film franchise that would take him from promising newcomer to a face recognized worldwide. The moment that transformed Edi Gathegi from a working actor into a recognizable face came in 2008, when he was cast as Laurent in Twilight. The franchise was already exploding into a global phenomenon, with millions of fans obsessing over the books and eagerly anticipating the films. For Edi, landing a role in such a cultural juggernaut was like being dropped into the eye of a storm. Laurent was a vampire, unlike the sparkling Cullen clan. He was sleek, menacing, and unpredictable. His presence carried danger. Though his screen time was limited, Edi's performance stood out. Audiences remembered his piercing eyes, his accent, and the way he delivered a quiet sense of menace that made his character unforgettable. He returned in New Moon, 2009, securing his place in one of the biggest franchises of the era. Overnight, Edi went from being that guy on House to being recognized worldwide. But Twilight was just the beginning. In 2011, he joined another massive franchise, Marvel's X-Men, First Class. Cast as Darwin, a mutant whose ability was to adapt to any threat, Edi seemed perfectly matched to the role. After all, adaptation was the very story of his own life. Fans were excited to see what Darwin could become within the team of young mutants. Then came the twist that would stir controversy for years. Despite Darwin's power to survive anything, his character was killed off early in the film. Fans were furious. To them, it felt like a waste of a character with limitless potential. And many pointed out the troubling pattern of sidelining black superheroes too quickly. Edi himself later admitted his disappointment, calling it a case of bad representation and a missed opportunity. Yet, even in this setback, something important happened. The conversation around Darwin's death sparked broader discussions about diversity and representation in Hollywood, and Edi's voice became part of that dialogue. He wasn't just acting anymore. He was speaking truth to an industry that often resisted change. By this point, Edi Gathegi had worked in 2 of the biggest franchises in pop culture. His face was known, his talent undeniable, and his reputation as a versatile actor was sealed. But instead of just chasing blockbuster fame, he began steering his career toward roles that carried more depth, more substance, and more control over the stories he wanted to tell. Hey, if you're still here, can I get a like and subscribe? Thanks for the support. Back to the video. For many actors, breaking into big franchises would be the ultimate goal. But for Edi Gathegi, the journey was never just about fame or money. It was about meaning. Hollywood, however, doesn't always reward depth. Instead, he found himself fighting against something that has sidelined countless actors of color: typecasting. After Twilight and X-Men, Edi noticed the roles that came his way often fell into narrow categories: villains, side characters, or disposable figures. It was as if the industry only saw him through one lens. For someone who had trained at one of the most respected drama schools, who had performed Shakespeare on stage, this limitation wasn't just frustrating, it was insulting. He wanted to embody layered, complex characters, not stereotypes. Rather than stay silent, Edi began speaking up. In interviews, he challenged the way black characters were treated in Hollywood films. When asked about Darwin's early death in X-Men First Class, he didn't sugarcoat his feelings. He called it out for what it was: bad representation and a missed opportunity. His honesty struck a chord with fans who felt the same frustration. It also set him apart from actors who avoided criticism for fear of losing roles. But his voice carried beyond Hollywood. Edi never forgot where he came from. Even as his career grew, he remained deeply connected to Kenya. He spoke openly about the importance of storytelling in African cultures and the need to invest in the creative industries there. In interviews with outlets like Nation Africa, he emphasized that art is more than entertainment. It's a way to preserve history, inspire communities, and reshape how the world sees Africa. This dual focus, pushing Hollywood for better representation while uplifting talent back home, made Edi's career path unique. He wasn't simply climbing the ladder for himself. He was carving out space for others, using his platform to shed light on overlooked stories. But while his advocacy gave him purpose, he also knew that change takes time. And in the meantime, he had to keep working, keep building, and keep proving that he was more than the boxes Hollywood tried to fit him in. That determination would lead him into some of the most interesting roles of his career, performances that showed the world exactly what he was capable of when given the space to shine. By the mid-2000s, Edi Gathegi had already proven he could handle blockbuster franchises, but he wanted more than just the flash of big-budget films. He wanted roles with depth, with layers, with grit, and it was television, not movies, that gave him the canvas to fully stretch his talent. In 2015, he appeared in the critically acclaimed series Justified. Playing Jean-Baptiste, a cunning and dangerous Haitian criminal, Edi brought a chilling intensity to the role. He wasn't just another bad guy. He delivered a performance that made audiences uncomfortable in the best way, turning what could have been a throwaway character into someone unforgettable. The show's fans, known for being passionate and vocal, quickly took notice. But his biggest leap came in Startup, 2016 to 2018, a gritty drama about the collision of tech, money, and crime. Cast as Ronald Dacey, a gang leader who unexpectedly partners with entrepreneurs to build a digital currency empire, Edi delivered one of the most complex performances of his career. Ronald wasn't a one-note criminal. He was a father, a strategist, a man torn between loyalty to his community and the temptation of power. Across 3 seasons, Edi carried the kind of gravitas that made viewers root for him, even when his choices blurred moral lines. Startup became a sleeper hit, particularly after it landed on streaming platforms, where new audiences discovered it years after its initial release. For many fans, this was the first time they saw Edi not just as a supporting player, but as a leading force who could anchor a story. Beyond TV, he also explored independent films and smaller projects that allowed him to showcase his versatility. From dramas to thrillers, he took on characters that were morally complex, often existing in the gray areas where good and evil blur. This pattern of choosing roles wasn't accidental. Edi was deliberately crafting a reputation as an actor who could bring depth and humanity to any character, no matter how dark, conflicted, or unconventional. By this point, his career had shifted. He wasn't just that actor from Twilight or the guy who played Darwin. He had established himself as a serious performer with range and weight, and that evolution set the stage for what would soon become the biggest role of his career. For years, fans remembered Edi Gathegi as Darwin, the mutant whose story was cut short in X-Men First Class. But in 2025, fate handed him a second chance at superhero immortality, this time with a role that couldn't be more fitting. James Gunn, the new architect of the DC universe, cast Edi as Mr. Terrific, also known as Michael Holt, in the highly anticipated film Superman. For comic fans, Mr. Terrific is no minor character. He's a genius-level inventor, an Olympic-level athlete, and one of the most brilliant minds in the DC canon. In many ways, he's a character who represents reinvention and resilience, the very themes that have defined Edi's own life. When the news broke, fans lit up the internet. Some were shocked, others ecstatic, and many pointed out the poetic symmetry. The same actor once denied a full superhero arc in Marvel's universe was now being positioned as a cornerstone in DC's future. Edi himself acknowledged this full-circle moment, saying in interviews that playing Mr. Terrific felt like undoing the wrongs of Darwin. But the announcement carried even bigger implications. Reports confirmed that Edi signed a multi-project deal with DC, which means his Mr. Terrific won't be a one-off appearance. He's expected to show up in future films, possibly as part of the Justice Society or other DC crossovers. For an actor who once fought for more meaningful roles, this was validation on the highest level. Hollywood finally recognized his value not as a disposable character, but as a pillar of a cinematic universe. What makes this role even more exciting is that Mr. Terrific isn't just about superpowers. It's about intellect, identity, and resilience. In many ways, it's the kind of layered character Edi has always excelled at. He doesn't just play heroes or villains. He plays human beings with depth. And Mr. Terrific gives him the stage to show exactly that to a global audience. For longtime fans, it feels like justice. For newer ones, it's the perfect introduction to an actor who's been building toward this moment his entire career. And for Edi himself, it's more than a role. It's the redemption arc he's been waiting for. But while Hollywood is finally giving him the spotlight he deserves, what Edi chooses to do outside the camera might be just as important as the characters he plays. For Edi Gathegi, success has never been just about red carpets or box office numbers. Away from Hollywood, he's built a life grounded in balance, curiosity, and a deep sense of connection to his roots. Travel is one of his greatest passions. Whether it's exploring hidden corners of the world or returning home to Kenya, Edi thrives on experiencing different cultures. He often speaks about how travel keeps him humble, reminding him that the world is far bigger than the bubble of Hollywood. These journeys aren't just vacations. They're sources of inspiration, feeding the perspective and authenticity he brings to his characters. Equally important is his commitment to mindfulness. Edi practices meditation, centering himself in an industry known for chaos and pressure. He's spoken about the importance of slowing down, of protecting mental health, and of carving out peace in a career that constantly demands performance. Fitness remains a part of his routine too, not out of vanity, but as a way of honoring the athletic discipline that once defined him. The athlete in him never disappeared, it simply evolved. But perhaps the most meaningful part of his life beyond Hollywood lies in his dedication to Kenya's creative industry. Edi has consistently advocated for building platforms that give local talent the chance to shine. He believes art has the power to transform economies, shape identities, and rewrite how the world perceives Africa. By investing time and influence into this mission, he's using his success not just for personal gain, but for collective growth. Even in interviews with outlets like Nation Africa and GQ, Edi makes it clear that balance is the foundation of his life. Fame may be fleeting, but purpose endures. Whether it's through reading, exploring, or mentoring, he's constantly working on becoming more than just the roles he plays. In the end, that's what separates Edi Gathegi from so many others in Hollywood. He's not chasing celebrity, he's building legacy. With Superman set to launch the new DC universe, fans are asking the same question. What's next for Edi Gathegi after Mr. Terrific? The answer may be bigger than anyone expects. Reports confirm that his deal with DC isn't limited to a single film. That means Mr. Terrific could appear across multiple projects, whether it's in Justice Society stories, crossovers with other DC heroes, or even his own solo spotlight. Considering the character's rich comic history as both a genius inventor and a leader, the possibilities are wide open. There's also speculation online that Edi's portrayal could expand beyond the big screen. With streaming now at the center of superhero storytelling, some fans wonder if Mr. Terrific might anchor a series of his own, giving audiences a deeper look at one of DC's most underrated heroes. Nothing has been confirmed yet, but the buzz is strong, and where there's smoke, there's usually fire. But beyond DC, Edi's career is equally promising. With the attention this role brings, doors will open for him to take on more leading parts in dramas, thrillers, and even international projects. He's already shown he thrives in complex, morally layered roles, and Hollywood is finally catching up to what audiences have seen for years. Edi Gathegi is a star ready to step into the spotlight. For now, all eyes are on Mr. Terrific. But if Edi's past has taught us anything, it's that he refuses to be boxed in. The same man who turned injury into reinvention, who transformed setbacks into opportunities, is now standing on the edge of his biggest chapter yet. And the next move he makes could redefine not just his career, but the way Hollywood treats characters who were once left in the shadows. If you enjoy the video, consider liking and subscribing for more video like this. If you're curious why James Gunn chose Nicholas Hoult as Lex Luthor, click here for more. CB out.